You never realize you are just a tool until your mother sips her wine and tells you to cancel your wedding to fund your brother's big day. I did not scream. I simply slid the unpaid bill across the tablecloth toward my father and walked out. They mistook my silence for surrender. But they were wrong. That silence was the sound of me unlocking the safety on a weapon they did not even know I had. My name is Bella Cooper, and I was sitting in a booth upholstered in oxblood leather, watching the condensation slide down a glass of overpriced sparkling water. We were at one of those dimly lit, mahogany-paneled steakhouses in downtown Pittsburgh where the waiters wear white jackets and the menu does not list prices because if you have to ask. You should not be eating there. Across the table sat the three people who shared my DNA, yet felt like a separate species entirely. My father was studying the wine list with a feigned intensity, desperate to avoid making eye contact with me. My brother, Cole, was busy admiring his reflection in the back of a spoon, and my mother was looking at me with that terrifyingly serene expression she wore right before she decided to rearrange someone else's life. I am 33 years old. I have a mortgage I pay myself, a career they do not understand, and a fiancé named Rodney who treats me like a partner rather than a prop. Yet, in this booth, the years peeled away, and I felt the old, familiar sensation of shrinking. It is a specific kind of suffocation reserved for the scapegoat of the family. The feeling that you are taking up space that could be better used by someone else, specifically by Cole. The air smelled of seared beef and expensive cologne. My mother took a long, delicate sip of her Cabernet, the red liquid coating her lips, before she set the glass down with a precise click. She folded her hands on the table. "We need to talk about the schedule," she said. Her voice was light, conversational, as if she were suggesting we order an appetizer rather than dismantling my future. I nodded, thinking she meant the logistics of the upcoming months. Rodney and I had set our date for October 14th. Cole and his fiancée, Madison, had gotten engaged 6 months after us, and I assumed they were aiming for a spring wedding the following year. "Cole wants October 14th, my mother said. I blinked. I took a slow breath. I thought I had misheard. I looked at Cole. He was smirking. A small, tight expression that did not reach his eyes. He raised his left hand to smooth back his hair, a calculated gesture designed to flash the heavy, gold watch on his wrist. It was a new acquisition, something that cost more than my first car, a symbol of his status as the golden boy who could do no wrong. "That is my date," I said. My voice was calm. I was proud of that. "Rodney and I have deposits down. We have the venue locked in." My mother waved her hand dismissively, as if swatting away a gnat. "Cancel it," she said. It was not a question. It was a command. I stared at her. The noise of the restaurant seemed to drop away, leaving only the buzzing silence between us. "You want me to cancel my wedding?" I repeated. "Postpone it? Bella, don't be dramatic," she said, cutting into her steak. "Look, let us be realistic. Cole is at a crucial point in his career. This wedding is not just a party, it is a networking event. The vice president of Atlas Harbor is going to be there. Investors are going to be there. It needs to be perfect. And frankly, we cannot split the family's focus, or the family's funds, between two events in the same month." She paused to chew, swallowing before delivering the final blow. "Besides," she continued, dabbing her mouth with a linen napkin, "we need you on the ground. Madison is overwhelmed with the planning. You are organized. You are good with lists. You can handle the vendors, manage the timeline, make sure everything runs smoothly for your brother." She looked me dead in the eye, and her next words carved themselves into my chest. "Cancel your wedding. You have to run logistics for Cole's. For once, Bella. You can be useful." Useful. The word hung in the air, heavy and toxic. It was not loved. It was not valued. It was useful, like a wrench, like a dish rag. Something you pick up when you have a mess to clean and toss back in the drawer when you are done. I looked at my father. He was staring intensely at his baked potato, mashing the butter into the starch with surgical precision. He knew this was wrong. I knew he knew. but he would never say a word. In the Cooper household, peace was kept by feeding the beast, and my mother's ambition for Cole was a beast that was never full. I looked at Cole. He did not look away. He looked bored. "Come on, Belle," he said, his voice dripping with that casual arrogance that had been subsidized by my parents since he was born. "Don't make this a thing. Madison really needs the help. And honestly, your little ceremony was going to be, 80 people in a garden, you can do that anytime. This is big league stuff." He leaned forward, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "Plus, I need you to handle the payments for the florists and the caterer initially. Just until my bonus clears next quarter. It is easier if you organize it, so not only was I losing my date, I was expected to finance his theft of it. Under the guise of being organized, I felt a scream building in my throat. It was a primal thing, a collection of every birthday forgotten, every achievement minimized, every time I had been told to step back so Cole could shine. I wanted to flip the table. I wanted to scream until the crystal glasses shattered. I wanted to grab my father by his lapels and shake him until he found his spine. But I didn't, because if I screamed, I was the crazy one. If I cried, I was the emotional one. If I argued, I was the jealous one. They had a label ready for every reaction I could possibly have. Except one. Total silence. I exhaled, long and slow, through my nose. I picked up my purse from the floor. I reached for the black leather folder containing the bill for our dinner. My father had left it in the center of the table, assuming, as always, that the details would sort themselves out. I opened it. The total was $480.50. I did not reach for my card. I did not offer to split it. I did not put down a $20 bill for the tip. I simply slid the leather folder across the white tablecloth until it rested directly in front of my father. The soft thud it made against his wine glass was the only sound I made. I stood up. My chair scraped against the hardwood floor, a harsh, grating noise that made a woman at the next table look over. "Where are you going?" my mother asked, her fork hovering halfway to her mouth. "We haven't ordered dessert." I looked down at them. It felt like looking at strangers through the wrong end of a telescope. They seemed small, distant. "I am done," I said. My mother sighed, rolling her eyes. "Sit down. Bella, stop being childish. We need to discuss the color scheme. Madison wants—" I turned my back on them. I walked away. I could feel their eyes on my spine. I could hear the sudden silence at their table, followed by the inevitable murmur of my mother apologizing to the heir for her difficult daughter. I walked past the host stand, past the coat check, and pushed through the heavy revolving doors into the biting Pittsburgh night. The cold air hit me like a slap, shocking my system. I walked to my car, a sensible sedan I had paid off 3 years ago, parked in the far corner of the lot. My hands were shaking, not from cold, but from adrenaline. It was the adrenaline of someone who had just jumped off a moving train. I sat in the driver's seat and locked the doors. The silence of the car was a sanctuary. My phone buzzed, then it buzzed again, and again, a rapid-fire assault against my peace. I looked at the screen. It was Cole. Text from Cole. "Mom is pissed. You need to grow up." Text from Cole. "Here is the vendor list. Call the lighting guy first thing tomorrow. He is threatening to bail." Text from Cole. "Also, we need to upgrade the champagne package. Add it to your tracker." Text from Cole. Timeline attached. "Do not mess this up. No apology. No acknowledgement that he had just demanded I cannibalize my own happiness to feed his ego. Just orders. Just logistics. Not a single occurrence of the word, please." I stared at the glowing screen. For years, I had read these kinds of messages and translated them. I had told myself, he is just stressed, or that is just how our family communicates. I had acted as the universal translator, turning their abuse into a language I could tolerate. But tonight, the translator was broken. I read the words for exactly what they were: disrespect, exploitation, contempt. My phone rang. The name on the screen changed from Cole to Rodney. The tension in my shoulders dropped 2 inches just seeing his name. I slid the icon to answer and put the phone to my ear. "Hey," Rodney said. His voice was warm, grounded, the sound of safety. "I was just heating up leftovers. How did it go? Did they like the invitation samples?" I let out a laugh that sounded more like a dry cough. "They didn't see the samples." I said. Rodney paused. He knew my family. He knew the toll these dinners took on me. "What happened?" he asked, his tone shifting from casual to protective. "They told me to cancel our wedding." Rodney. "What they want Cole to have our date. October 14th. Mom told me to cancel ours and run the logistics for his instead." She said. I took a breath, fighting the wobble in my voice. She said this time I could finally be useful. There was a silence on the other end of the line, a long, heavy silence. I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the background of our apartment, the apartment that felt more like home than the house I grew up in ever had. "Bella," Rodney said, his voice low and dangerous. "Tell me you told them to go to hell." I walked out. I said, "I stuck Dad with the bill and I walked out." "Good," Rodney said. "Don't go back. Come home. We will order pizza. We will drink the cheap wine we actually like. We are not changing our date." "I know," I said. "But Rodney, it's not just about the date. What is it?" I looked out the windshield at the streetlights reflecting on the asphalt. "I just saw them," I said. I really saw them. For 33 years. I have been looking at them through a fog of guilt and obligation. But tonight, the fog is gone. I saw their true colors. Neon clear. They don't love me, Rodney. They just love what I can do for them. "Come home," he repeated gently. "Let's get you out of that parking lot." I drove home on autopilot. The city blurred past me. The bridges, the tunnels, the steel skeletons of the industry that built this town. My mind was racing, but it wasn't chaotic. It was cold. It was calculating. When I walked into our apartment, Rodney was waiting by the door. He didn't say anything. He just pulled me into a hug. I buried my face in his sweater, smelling cedar and laundry detergent. I didn't cry. I was past crying. I pulled back and looked at him. He looked tired, but his eyes were fierce. "I am keeping the date," I said. "Damn right you are." He said. I walked into the bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at my left hand. The diamond on my finger wasn't huge. It wasn't the rock that Cole had bought for Madison using money I suspected he didn't actually have. But Rodney had paid for it with cash he saved from working overtime. It was real. I slid the ring off my finger. For a moment, I just held it. I felt the weight of the gold in my palm. My mother's voice echoed in my head. "Cancel it. You can be useful." I closed my fist around the ring, squeezing it until the metal dug into my skin. Then, I slid it back on. I pushed it down to the base of my finger, firm and final. This was not just jewelry anymore. It was a boundary. It was a declaration of war. I am not living for permission anymore. I whispered to the empty room. I stood up and walked to the desk in the corner. This was my workspace. My family thought I was a mid-level administrative assistant. They thought I spent my days filing papers and making coffee. That was the story I let them believe because it fit their narrative of me. Bella the follower, Bella the helper. They didn't know I was a contract fraud investigator for Blackridge Integrity Partners. They didn't know that for the last 7 years. I had been hunting down corporate embezzlement, tracing hidden assets, and exposing executives who thought they were smarter than the system. They didn't know that my mind was a steel trap for inconsistencies. They didn't know that I could look at a spreadsheet and see a crime scene. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed to life, casting a blue light across my face. I typed in my password, a string of characters that would take a supercomputer 100 years to crack. I navigated to a hidden partition on my hard drive. It was a folder I had created years ago, almost as a joke, but then kept adding to, bit by bit. Every time Cole asked for money, every time my parents made a cryptic comment about their finances, it was a folder labeled Simply Family. I clicked it open. Inside were years of digital breadcrumbs, scanned receipts, bank statements I had accidentally on purpose seen, public records of property assessments. It was a mess, a puzzle with missing pieces, but tonight, I had the key. My mother wanted me to run the logistics for Cole's wedding. She wanted me to handle the vendors. She wanted me to look at the contracts. She had invited the fox into the henhouse and handed him a knife and fork. I stared at the screen, at the blinking cursor. The anger that had been boiling in my gut settled down into something colder, harder. It felt like steel hardening in a forge. They thought they could use me up and throw me away. They thought I was weak because I was quiet. They thought they could take my wedding day, my happiness, my life, and feed it to the golden boy to keep his shine bright. I reached for my phone and opened Cole's text thread. I typed a single message. Send me the vendor contracts. I will take a look. I hit send. I sat back in my chair, the light from the screen reflecting in my eyes. They want me useful. I'll be useful, in a way they'll never forget. The smell of my 16th year was a mixture of burnt bacon, stale coffee, and lemon floor wax, while other girls my age were worrying about prom dates or algebra exams. I was worrying about the dinner rush at the Rust Belt Diner off the highway. I can still feel the phantom weight of the tray on my left shoulder, heavy with 3 plates of meatloaf and a pitcher of ice water. My feet throbbed in cheap, non-slip shoes that I had paid for myself. Every shift was a 6-hour marathon of forced smiles and mental arithmetic, calculating tips down to the penny. But the hardest part of the week was not the Friday night rush. It was Saturday morning. Every Saturday, I would sit at the kitchen table, the one with the wobbling leg that my father promised to fix for a decade and never did. I would take my cash tips, smoothed out and organized by denomination, and slide them into a white envelope. Usually, it was about $150. Sometimes, if the truckers were generous, maybe $200. I would push the envelope across the table to my father. He never looked up from his newspaper. He never said thank you. He would just reach out a hand, thick fingers stained with ink, and take it. He would open the flap, count the bills with a wet thumb, and nod. That was it. That was the transaction. They called it a family contribution. They called it learning responsibility. I called it rent for a room I did not ask to be born into. That same year, the year I learned that my labor was the currency required to buy peace in my own home. Cole turned 16. There was no envelope for Cole. There was a driveway filled with balloons. There was a brand new sedan wrapped in a red bow so large it looked like a joke. My parents stood on the porch, beaming, their faces lit up with a pride I had never seen directed at me. He needs reliable transportation for his internships, my mother had said, clutching her hands to her chest as Cole revved the engine. He is going places. Bella. We have to invest in his future. I remember standing by the screen door, my apron still smelling of grease from the morning shift. I was holding a biology textbook I had taped together because we could not afford a new one. I looked at the shiny car. I looked at my taped book. That was the day I understood the family economy. It was a simple equation. Cole was the investment. He was the volatile stock they poured everything into, convinced he would one day pay out millions. I was the insurance policy. I was the savings account you smash open with a hammer when the roof leaks. I was the backup plan. Cole was born to win. I was born to break even. This disparity did not make me bitter immediately. First, it made me observant. When you are the one who has to pay for your own existence, you learn the value of a dollar differently than someone who thinks money flows from a tap. I started keeping records. At 16, I bought a small spiral notebook. In it, I wrote down every dollar I gave them. I wrote down every shift I worked. I wrote down the cost of the car they bought Cole versus the cost of the bus pass I bought for myself. I was not plotting revenge. Not yet. I was just trying to prove to myself that I was not crazy. I needed to see the inequality in black and white ink to believe it, because their gaslighting was so effective. They told me I was selfish for wanting to keep my tips. They told me I was petty for looking at Cole's new clothes with envy. The notebook was my anchor in reality. By the time I reached my 20s, that notebook had evolved into a complex system of spreadsheets. I learned to track expenses, categorize spending, and forecast deficits. I learned that love in the Cooper household was conditional, and the condition was solvency. As long as I was solvent, as long as I was providing. I was tolerated. The moment I had a need, I was a burden. Then I met Rodney. I was 26. I was working 2 jobs and finishing my certification in forensic accounting. We met at a coffee shop. Not in a romantic comedy way, but because he spilled his Americano on my carefully organized study notes. He did not just apologize, he stopped. He looked at the mess. He looked at me. He did not offer to buy me a new coffee and walk away. He sat down. He asked what the notes were for. He listened as I explained the intricacies of asset tracing. Rodney was different. He was calm. He was steady. He was a carpenter who ran his own small renovation business. He worked with his hands, creating things that lasted, while I worked with data, dismantling lies. On our 3rd date, the bill came. I instinctively reached for it. My hand moved with the speed of a reflex honed by years of paying for my parents' mistakes and my brother's whims. Rodney gently placed his hand over mine. "Bella," he said. I looked up, defensive. "I can pay for myself." I said, my voice sharp, "I don't need a handout." He didn't flinch. "I know you can," he said. "I have seen you work. I know you can buy this whole restaurant if you wanted to. But I invited you. I want to treat you. Not because you need it, but because I want to." It was such a simple concept. Wanting to give, not because it was demanded, not because it was a tax, but just because I let go of the check. It was the hardest thing I had done all year. Rodney loved my directness. He did not call me difficult. He called me clear. He did not call me stingy. He called me smart. He respected my boundaries as if they were physical walls he had no right to breach without an invitation. With him beside me, I flourished. I stopped giving my parents the envelopes. I told them I was saving for my own future. They screamed. They cried. They called me ungrateful. But I held firm. I bought my own apartment. It was not huge, but it was mine. Every square inch of it was paid for with money I had earned. Money I had protected. I furnished it with things I chose. I paid off my student loans. I started building a career that commanded respect in high-rise offices, even if my family thought I was just a secretary. But here is the twisted irony of a toxic family. The more stable I became, the more they hated me for it. When I was struggling, when I was the waitress with the tired eyes, I was useful but pathetic. They could pity me. They could look down on me. But when I became successful, when I became independent, that was an insult. My stability highlighted their chaos. My savings highlighted their debt. My quiet success was a mirror reflecting their loud failures. Cole, meanwhile, was failing upward. He bounced from job to job, always leaving because of a bad boss or a toxic environment, never because of his own incompetence. He started a business that failed. He tried day trading and lost a fortune, and every time he stumbled, he came to me. It was never a direct ask. It was always framed as a family emergency. "Bella," he would say on the phone, his voice tight, "I am in a bind. Just a short-term cash flow issue. The bank made a mistake." Or my mother would call. "Your brother needs help. Bella, he has so much potential. But the world is just against him right now. You have that nice apartment. You have that steady job. You can help him. It is your duty. Duty." That was their favorite word. It was the weapon they used to bludgeon me into submission. For a long time, I gave in. I paid a credit card bill here. I covered a car repair there. I told myself it was easier to pay than to fight. I told myself that maybe, if I helped him enough, he would finally stand on his own feet. But a leech does not stop feeding because it is full. It stops feeding only when you detach it. The realization hit me on a Tuesday afternoon. 3 years ago, I had just refused to co-sign a loan for Cole's newest venture, a tech startup that had no business plan, only buzzwords. My father had called me, screaming that I was sabotaging the family's legacy. I sat in my office, looking at the city skyline, and the truth washed over me. They were not afraid I would fail. They were terrified I would succeed. If I succeeded, I did not need them. If I did not need them, they lost their control. If they lost their control, they lost their punching bag, their ATM, their scapegoat. They needed me to be beneath them so they could feel tall. That was the day the Bank of Bella closed. I stopped answering the emergency calls. I stopped engaging in the drama. I focused on Rodney, on my career, on the life I was building. I found peace. I found happiness. And that, I realize now, was the unforgivable sin. Which brings us to the wedding. My wedding was supposed to be the final seal on my independence. It was the moment I would stand up in front of the world and declare that I belonged to myself and to the man I chose. It was going to be small, intimate, and paid for entirely by us. No family money, no strings attached. I had spent months planning it. I had chosen the date, October 14th, because it was the anniversary of the day I paid off my student loans. It was my Independence Day. I should have known they would not let me have it. I should have known that Cole could not stand to see me have something that was just mine. He did not just want a wedding, he wanted my wedding. He wanted to take the one thing I had protected from them, the one day where I was supposed to be the main character, and turn it into another episode of The Cole Show. He knew exactly what he was doing. He knew the date. He knew the significance. And he chose it anyway. And as I sat in my apartment, staring at the vendor contracts on my laptop screen, I thought back to that 16-year-old girl in the diner uniform. I thought about the girl who handed over her tips and got nothing in return. She was gone. The woman sitting here now was not a waitress. She was an auditor, and she was done paying the bill. Cole wanted to steal my day. He wanted to hijack my happiness. He thought he was taking something from his little sister. The pushover. He had no idea he was stealing from a woman who knew how to track a thief, and who had spent 17 years waiting for the right moment to close the account. I looked at the first contract on the screen. It was for the venue. The deposit was massive. The names on the agreement were my parents, but the financing source, that was where it got interesting. I leaned forward. It was time to get to work. The notification arrived at 6:30 in the morning, vibrating against the nightstand like a warning shot. It was a digital save the date, designed with excessive gold leaf animation and a font that tried too hard to look aristocratic. Cole Cooper, Madison Row. October 14th, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I stared at the screen, my eyes adjusting to the brightness. It was not just the same day, it was the exact same time. For a moment, I thought it was a mistake, a typo. Surely, even they possessed a basic understanding of physics. A family cannot be in two places at once. But then the phone call started. My mother did not call to ask. She called to inform. The first call came at 7:15. I let it go to voicemail. The second came at 7:18. The third at 7:20. By the time I sat up and swung my legs out of bed, I had 7 missed calls and 3 voicemails. I listened to the first one while brushing my teeth. Bella, pick up. We have a situation with the scheduling, and we need to be logical about this. The second voicemail was more strident. Bella, stop ignoring me. Cole has locked in the venue. It is the Grandview Estate. It is the only date they had available for the Platinum package. We cannot pass this up. The third voicemail was the clincher. It just makes sense. Bella, why force the family to choose if you move your date? Everyone can attend both. If you keep yours, you are just making people split up. And you know Aunt Sarah cannot drive across town in traffic. Don't be selfish. I spat out the toothpaste and looked at myself in the mirror. Don't be selfish, the family motto, applied exclusively to me. I walked out to the kitchen where Rodney was making coffee. He saw my face and immediately handed me a mug. They set the date, didn't they, he asked. October 14th, I said, taking a sip. 4 o'clock. Rodney paused, the coffee pot hovering in midair. That is our time, not just the day. The hour? I know. He set the pot down with a clatter. That is not an accident. Bella, that is a hostile takeover. My phone rang again. It was my mother. I put it on speaker and set it on the granite counter. Hello. Mother? Oh, finally, she huffed. Did you see the invitation? It is gorgeous, isn't it? Madison has such taste. You booked my wedding day, I said, keeping my voice flat. We booked a wedding day. Bella, the date does not belong to you. It is a Saturday in October. It belongs to the calendar. Look, this is actually a blessing. Cole's guest list has exploded. The VP of Atlas Harbor is coming. 2 senior partners are flying in from Chicago. This is not just a wedding anymore. It is a power launch. It is his debut into the executive class. I gripped the edge of the counter. And my wedding. Yours is sweet, she said, the word dripping with condescension. But let us be honest. Yours is a party. Cole's is an event. It is a career necessity. We need everyone there. We need the family united to show strength. If you insist on keeping your little ceremony at the same time, you are going to look petty. You will be the sister who tried to distract from her brother's big moment. She was not just asking me to move. She was framing the narrative so that if I didn't move, I was the villain. I need to go to work, I said, and hung up. But the assault was just beginning. By noon, my inbox was flooded. Cole had added me to an email chain with the subject line, Logistics Ops, Cooper/Rowe Wedding. I opened the attachment. It was an Excel spreadsheet. My name was at the top of column B. Underneath it was a list of tasks that would require a team of 3 people to execute. Task 1. Coordinate airport pickups for VIP guests, list attached. Task 2. Manage vendor load-in at Grandview Estate, must be on site by 8 in the morning. Task 3. Final check of floral arrangements. Madison thinks the lilies might wilt. Task 4. Handle tip distribution for catering staff. He was not asking me to be a guest. He was not even asking me to be a bridesmaid. He was drafting me as unpaid labor. He assumed that since my wedding was obviously going to be canceled, I would have plenty of free time to ensure his was perfect. I felt a vibration in my pocket. Another notification. This one was different. It was from Captured Moments Photography. The vendor Rodney and I had booked 6 months ago. We loved their candid style. We had paid a $500 deposit. Dear Bella, I am writing with sincere regret to inform you that we must cancel our contract for your event on October 14th. Due to an unforeseen conflict, we are no longer available. Your deposit will be refunded in full within 5 business days. I stared at the screen. Unforeseen conflict. I opened a new tab and went to Cole's wedding website, which was already live and password protected. Password golden. I scrolled down to the vendor section. There it was, listed under Our Dream Team, Photography by Captured Moments. Cole had poached my photographer. He had likely offered them double the rate, or maybe my mother had called, leveraged the bigger exposure of their event, and convinced them that my wedding was tentative anyway. It was not just competition, it was erasure. They were systematically dismantling my wedding to build his. I sat in my cubicle at Blackridge, surrounded by the hum of servers and the quiet clicking of keyboards, and I felt a coldness spread through my chest. This was how they operated. They did not stab you in the front. They just bought the ground out from under you. I picked up my phone and called the photographer. Hi, this is Bella Cooper, I said when he answered. Oh, Bella, hi. He sounded nervous. Look, I sent an email. I am really sorry, but... How much did they pay you? I interrupted. Excuse me, my brother, Cole Cooper. The event you suddenly have a conflict with, how much did he offer to make you breach contract? There was a long silence. Look, it is business. Bella, it is a full-day package, 2 shooters, videography included. It is a $4,000 upgrade from what you booked. I have a family to feed. I didn't scream. I didn't threaten to sue. I understand. I said, business is business. I hung up. I went home early. When I walked in, Rodney was sitting at the kitchen table with a notepad. He looked up, his face set in a hard line. We can move it, he said. I froze. What? We can move the wedding, he said, standing up. We can do it on the Friday before, or the Sunday after, or we can go to the courthouse next week. I don't care about the party. Bella, I care about you. I don't want to watch them tear you apart for the next 3 months. He walked over and took my hands. You don't need to ask their permission, he said fiercely. We can opt out. We can disappear. We can let them have their power launch, and we can go have a life. I looked at this man, this wonderful, sane man who wanted to protect me from the crossfire. It would be so easy to say yes, to retreat, to let Cole have his day and pretend it didn't matter. But if I did that, they won. If I moved my date, I confirmed their worldview that Cole's desires were mandates, and my life was negotiable. No, I said, Bella, no. Rodney, I squeezed his hands. I am not moving the date, and I am not fighting them for it either. He looked confused. Then what are you doing? I'm going to see where this goes. I said, I want to see exactly how far they are willing to push. My phone chimed on the table. Another email. This one was from the hosting platform for my wedding website. Security alert. We detected a failed login attempt on your account. IP address. Matches a location in downtown Pittsburgh. Method security question recovery. Question answered incorrectly. What was the name of your first pet? My blood turned to ice. The IP address was from the corporate district, Cole's office. He had tried to hack into my wedding website. He probably wanted to delete it, or change the details, or simply see my guest list to make sure he wasn't missing anyone important for his own. He had tried to answer the security question, what was the name of your first pet? He would have typed, Buster, our childhood retriever, but he failed. He failed because Buster was his dog. My first pet was a stray cat I fed behind the garage when I was 9. I named him Shadow. My parents made me get rid of him after a week because Cole was allergic, even though Cole had never been within 10 feet of the cat. Cole didn't know the answer because he never paid attention to anything that didn't revolve around him. That failed login attempt was the final straw. It was a violation. It was digital breaking and entering. I looked at Rodney. They tried to hack my account. I said. Rodney's jaw tightened. Okay, that is it. I'm going over there. No, I said, grabbing his arm. You stay here. I walked over to the table and picked up my phone. I opened the text thread with Cole. The last message was the Excel file attachment. I took a deep breath. I needed them to think I was broken. I needed them to think I had reverted to the obedient little sister who fixed their messes and cleaned up their scraps. I needed access. If I fought them, they would lock me out. If I surrendered, they would hand me the keys. I typed, Fine, you win. I will be there. I will handle the logistics. I hit send. The response was immediate. 3 dancing emojis from Mom. A thumbs up from Cole. Great, Cole typed. Start with the lighting contract. It is in the folder. Make sure we are not overpaying. I put the phone down. Rodney was watching me, worried. Bella, what are you doing? You just agreed to be his unpaid wedding planner. I turned to my laptop. I didn't open the vendor contracts. I opened a fresh document. I typed a new heading, Target Profile Cole Cooper. I am not planning his wedding. Rodney, I said, my voice steady and cold. I am building a case file. I started typing. Weakness 1, vanity. He needs to be the smartest person in the room. Weakness 2, laziness. He delegates all financial oversight. Weakness 3, greed. He is mixing personal expenses with business accounts. I looked up at Rodney. He wants a power launch, I said. I'm going to give him a launch he will never recover from. But to do that, I need to be on the inside. I need to be the one holding the contracts. I need to be the one approving the payments. Rodney looked at the screen, then back at me. A slow realization dawned on his face. You are going undercover, he said. I am not going undercover. I said, typing a bullet point about his tax returns. I am just finally being the sister they always wanted, the useful one. I pulled up the Excel sheet Cole had sent me. I didn't look at it with dread anymore. I looked at it as a map. Every vendor he wanted me to call, every contract he wanted me to review, was a potential thread to pull. They wanted me to manage the money, fine. I would manage it. I would track every single cent. I would trace it back to its source. And if my suspicions were right, if the money paying for this coronation was as dirty as I thought it was, then Cole wasn't just planning a wedding. He was planning his own indictment. I picked up the phone again and replied to Cole. On it. Send me the bank login for the wedding fund so I can reconcile the deposits. I waited. The response came 30 seconds later. I smiled. It was a terrifyingly genuine smile. I'm in. I whispered. The digital footprint of a lie is often larger than the truth it is trying to hide. I sat at my desk, the glow of the dual monitors illuminating my face in the darkened apartment. Rodney had gone to bed an hour ago, but my mind was vibrating with the specific frequency of a hunt. I had access to the wedding bank account now, thanks to Cole's arrogance, but that was just the surface water. I needed to see the deep currents. I needed to know where the money was actually coming from. My parents had spent the last 5 years crying poverty. Every time I visited, there was a performance about the rising cost of heating oil, the price of prescription medication, the unfairness of property taxes in Mount Lebanon. They wore their financial struggle like a garment, a heavy coat they put on specifically to guilt me into paying for dinner or fixing their roof. Yet, here we were, a wedding budget that rivaled the GDP of a small island nation, a venue deposit of $25,000, a floral budget of $15,000, a custom suit for Cole that cost more than my first car. The math did not add up. I opened a new browser window and navigated to the Allegheny County Department of Real Estate website. It is a public portal, open to anyone who knows how to type an address. I typed in the address of the house I grew up in. It was a sturdy brick colonial on a tree-lined street, the symbol of my parents' middle-class respectability. I pulled the deed history. There it was, a recorded document from 3 weeks ago. It was a mortgage satisfaction piece followed immediately by a new filing, a cash-out refinance. My eyes scanned the numbers. They had not just refinanced for a lower rate, they had stripped the equity. The principal amount of the new loan was $450,000. Based on the current market assessment, that was nearly 80% of the home's value. I sat back in my chair, feeling a cold knot form in my stomach. They had owned that house for 30 years. They were supposed to be close to paying it off. It was their nest egg. It was their security. And in a single afternoon, they had reset the clock. They had signed away their ownership, burdening themselves with a massive monthly payment they could not possibly afford on their retirement income, just to liquefy the walls and roof into cash. For what? For a party. For a 6-hour reception where Cole could pretend he was a prince. I switched tabs to the bank account Cole had given me access to. I looked at the deposit history. There was the transfer. $200,000 transferred in from their joint checking account 2 days after the loan closed. But there was another deposit, $50,000. I clicked on the transaction details. The source code was distinct. It was not a bank transfer. It was a wire from an investment brokerage, specifically, a liquidation distribution. I recognize the code because I look at these codes all day long in my fraud investigations. It was a premature withdrawal from a 401k retirement account. I did the mental calculation to get $50,000 cash in hand after the mandatory 20% federal withholding, plus the 10% early withdrawal penalty, plus state taxes. My father must have liquidated nearly $80,000 of his retirement savings. He was burning his future to keep Cole warm. I felt a wave of nausea, but it was a cold, clinical nausea. It was the sickness of realization. This was not love. Love is supporting your child. Love is helping them when they fall. This was an addiction. My parents were addicted to the idea of Cole. They were addicted to the myth of the golden boy. They were willing to bankrupt themselves, to risk homelessness in their old age, just to maintain the facade that their son was a success story. If Cole was successful, then they were successful parents. If Cole failed, their entire identity collapsed. So they bought the illusion. They paid for the stage, the lights, the costume, all so they wouldn't have to look at the empty theater of their own lives. And where was I in this equation? I was the collateral damage. I scrolled back through the years in my mind. The pattern was so clear now. Every time Cole leveled up, I was pushed down. When Cole got that new car at 16, My parents cut my allowance to zero. When Cole needed tuition for a private college he eventually flunked out of, they told me I had to go to the state school and live at home to save money. They balanced the books of their delusion by taxing reality, and I was reality. My phone pinged. It was a text from Cole. "Hey, looking at the catering contract. The deposit is due tomorrow. Can you put it on your card? I am moving funds around and the transfer won't clear until Friday. I will wire you back instantly." I stared at the message. "Can you put it on your card?" It was such a casual request. $12,000 for the catering deposit. Just put it on plastic. Just be a good sister. But I looked closer. Cole claimed he was getting a promotion. He claimed he was a rising star at Atlas Harbor Systems. A man in his position should have a credit limit that could swallow a $12,000 charge without blinking. Why did he need me to front the money? And then I saw the trap. It wasn't just about cash flow. It was about liability. If I signed the contract, if I put my card down, I was the legal guarantor. If the wedding was canceled, if the check bounced, if the company went under, the caterer would come after me. Cole was insulating himself. He was building a firewall made of my credit score. He wanted to be the star, but he wanted me to be the producer who takes the fall when the budget goes over. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the vendor list he had sent me earlier. I noticed something strange about the miscellaneous expenses. There were payments listed for consulting fees to a company called Vertex Solutions. I ran a search on Vertex Solutions. No website, no LinkedIn profile. The business registration address was a P.O. box in a strip mall 3 towns over. I went back to the bank statement. There were 3 outgoing payments to Vertex Solutions in the last month, totaling $8,000. Who pays a consultant $8,000 for a wedding? I dug deeper. I looked at the endorsement on the back of the digital check image. It was deposited into a mobile wallet account, untraceable to the casual observer. But I am not a casual observer. I felt a hand on my shoulder. I jumped. It was Rodney. He had woken up and walked into the living room without me hearing him. He was squinting in the blue light of the monitors. "You are obsessing," he said gently. "Come back to bed." "I cannot," I said, my voice sounding hollow in the quiet room. "Rodney, they refinanced the house. They took the equity out. All of it." Rodney pulled up a chair and sat next to me. He looked at the deed document on the screen. He let out a low whistle. That is financial suicide," he said, "and Dad cashed out his 401k. I added, "They are destroying everything they worked for, and Cole is skimming off the top." I pointed to the Vertex Solutions payments. "I bet you anything that Vertex Solutions is Cole." I said, "He is taking the money Mom and Dad are bleeding out of their house, funneling it through a shell company, and putting it right back into his own pocket. He is robbing them while they are paying for his party." Rodney stared at the screen. "That is not just being a bad son, Bella. That is embezzlement. That is fraud. I know." I said, "So what do you want to do?" Rodney asked. He turned his chair to face me. "Do you want to call your parents? Do you want to show them this? Tell them to stop the wedding?" I laughed. A short, bitter sound. "If I showed them this right now, they wouldn't believe me." I said, "They would say I forged the documents. They would say I'm jealous. They would say Cole is just managing the funds, and I don't understand high finance. They will protect the lie until it kills them." "Then what?" Rodney asked. I turned back to the screen. "I want them to see." I said, "I don't want to tell them. I want to show them. I want to build a mountain of evidence so high that they cannot look away. I want to wait until the lights are brightest, until the applause is loudest, and then I want to turn on the house lights. I want them to look at their golden boy and see the thief standing underneath. I am not doing this to save them. Rodney," I continued, my voice dropping to a whisper, "I can't save them. They made their choice. I am doing this to clear my name. When this whole house of cards collapses, and it will collapse, I need to make sure I am not the one holding the match." Rodney looked at me for a long time. He reached out and touched my cheek. "You are terrifying when you are focused," he said. I leaned into his hand. "I have to be." We sat there for a moment in the silence. I was about to close the laptop to try and get a few hours of sleep when the email notification sound chimed. Ding! It was my work email. My Outlook was minimized in the background. I frowned. It was 2 a.m. Blackridge Integrity Partners didn't send automated alerts at this hour unless it was a priority 1 case assignment. I clicked the icon. The window expanded. The email was from the Director of Investigations. It was marked High Confidentiality. I read the subject line. Case assignment. Atlas Harbor Systems. Sales Division, leak. My heart stopped. Atlas Harbor Systems, Cole's company, the company where he was a rising star, the company whose vice president was the guest of honor at the wedding, the company that my mother claimed was the reason we had to move the date, the reason we had to impress the world. I opened the email. Bella, we have been retained by the board of Atlas Harbor Systems to investigate a series of internal irregularities. There is a suspicion of kickbacks involving regional sales managers and phantom vendor accounts. Preliminary data suggests a significant leak of funds disguised as marketing expenses. You are the lead on this. We need a forensic audit of the Northeast Division. Start immediately. I read it again. And a third time. The universe does not usually provide coincidences this precise. This was not a coincidence. This was a collision. Cole worked in the Northeast Division. Cole worked in sales. Cole was currently funneling money through phantom vendors for his wedding. I looked at the Vertex Solutions payment on one screen. I looked at the Atlas Harbor assignment on the other. The pieces of the puzzle didn't just fit together. They slammed together with the force of a magnetic lock. Cole wasn't just robbing our parents. He was robbing his employer. And he was using the wedding, the power launch, the networking event, to launder the money or cement the relationships that allowed the fraud to continue. And my firm, my team, had just been hired to catch him. I felt a smile spread across my face, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a predator that has just realized the prey has walked directly into the cage. Rodney. I said softly, Yeah. You know how you said I shouldn't go back to work yet? Yeah, I think I need to clock in. I said. I turned the screen so he could see the subject line. Atlas Harbor Systems. Rodney read it. His eyes went wide. No way. He whispered, Way. I said. I reached for the mouse. I clicked Accept Assignment. The game had just changed. It wasn't just a family drama anymore. It wasn't just about a stolen wedding date or a refinanced house. I was now the lead investigator on the case that would determine my brother's freedom. I looked at the cursor blinking on the screen. Let's see what you are hiding. Cole, I said to the empty room. I minimized the wedding spreadsheet. I maximized the forensic accounting software. The investigation was officially open. The glass walls of Blackridge Integrity Partners offered a panoramic view of the city skyline. A view reserved for people who charge $600 an hour to find out where the money went. My family assumed my office looked like a cubicle farm where dreams went to die. They imagined me filing invoices and fetching coffee for men in suits. They had no idea that I was the one the men in suits called when they were sweating through their shirts. I sat in my ergonomic chair, the leather cool against my back, and inserted my smart card into the reader. The screen flared to life. I typed in my credentials, followed by a rolling 6-digit code from my authenticator app. The system welcomed me not as Bella the sister, or Bella the daughter, but as Senior Forensic Analyst B. Cooper. The environment here was sterile, silent, and predatory. The air conditioning hummed with the precision of a server farm. On my desk, I had 3 monitors arranged in a semicircle. To my left, the Atlas Harbor Systems organizational chart. To my right, their vendor disbursement logs for the last fiscal year. In the center, the raw data stream of their sales commissions. I was not looking for a needle in a haystack. I was looking for the hay that was painted yellow to look like gold. The brief from the Atlas Harbor Board was specific unexplained revenue variance in the Northeast Sales Division. In corporate speak, that meant they were making money on paper. But the cash wasn't hitting the bank. Or rather, money was leaving the bank faster than it was coming in, disguised as the cost of doing business. I cracked my knuckles and began the sort. I pulled up the sales performance metrics. The Northeast Division was outperforming every other region by 40%. On the surface, it looked like a boom, a miracle. But in my line of work, miracles are usually just felonies with better marketing. I filtered the data by new account acquisition. A list of 52 new corporate clients populated the screen. These were the companies that had supposedly signed massive contracts with Atlas Harbor in the last 8 months, driving those high commission payouts. I started running background checks on the top 10. Client number 1. Apex Global Logistics. Address listed in Wilmington, Delaware. I ran the address through a geospatial database. It was a mailbox rental store next to a dry cleaner. I checked the incorporation documents. Filed 8 months ago. Officer of record, a registered agent service, no physical operations, no website traffic, no LinkedIn footprint. Client number 2, Stratosphere Consulting Group, address in Reno, Nevada. I pulled the satellite image. It was a vacant lot behind a gas station. The phone number listed on the invoice directed to a cloud-based voicemail system that cost $9 a month. I felt the familiar hum of the hunt in my veins. These were not clients. They were ghosts. Someone was creating fake companies, signing fake contracts with Atlas Harbor to boost sales numbers, claiming the massive commissions for closing the deals, and then, I suspected, using a separate budget to pay consulting fees back to these fake companies to make it look like legitimate business activity. I needed to know who was signing the deals. I overlaid the sales representative field onto the dataset. I didn't need to search for the name. It was already there, glowing in the high-contrast font of the database. Account Executive Cole Cooper. Account Executive Cole Cooper. Account Executive Cole Cooper. He wasn't just a participant, he was the architect. I stared at my brother's name. I didn't feel sadness. I didn't feel betrayal. Those emotions belonged to a sister. Right now, I was not a sister. I was an auditor, and I was looking at a subject who had gotten sloppy. I drilled down into the commission payouts. Cole had cleared nearly $200,000 in bonuses in the last 3 quarters based on these phantom contracts. That explained the wedding budget, that explained the custom suit, that explained the arrogance, but that was just the income side. I needed to see the outflow. Where was the company bleeding? I switched to the vendor payment logs. Atlas Harbor had a budget line for strategic partnership development. It was a slush fund, essentially, meant to wine and dine clients or pay for joint marketing ventures. I filtered for payments approved by Cole Cooper. There it was again, Vertex Solutions, the same company I had seen on his personal bank statement the night before, the company my parents' refinanced mortgage money was flowing into. Here, on the corporate ledger, Atlas Harbor had paid Vertex Solutions over $60,000 in market research fees in the last 6 months. I traced the routing number for Vertex Solutions. It led to a digital business account hosted by a fintech startup that boasted about privacy. But Blackridge had subpoena power, or at least, we had access to databases that made privacy a relative term. I ran a cross-reference on the account holder's digital fingerprint. The account was registered to a generic LLC, but the recovery email address was Cooper, C, private gmail.com. And the IP address used to access the account, it matched the IP address of Cole's workstation at Atlas Harbor, and occasionally, the IP address of my parents' house in Mount Lebanon. The picture was complete. Cole was creating fake clients to get commissions. He was then using company money to pay his own shell company, Vertex Solutions, for fake services, and to top it off, he was convincing our parents to invest their home equity into the same shell company, likely telling them it was a high-yield investment vehicle or some other buzzword salad. He was churning money from every source he could find, his employer, his parents, his future, and funneling it all into a single drain, his own ego. I sat back, exhaling a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It was a Ponzi scheme of one, and it was all being held together by the flimsy promise that once he got the big promotion at the wedding, he would be able to pay it all back. Or, more likely, he would just keep stealing at a higher level. I needed one more thing, I had the numbers. I had the trail. But juries and corporate boards love intent. They love a voice. I utilized my authorization to access the archived email server of the target employee. This was standard procedure for an internal fraud investigation. I searched his sent folder. Nothing. He was smart enough not to send incriminating emails to his work colleagues. I checked his drafts. People often treat the drafts folder like a diary. They type things out to vent or to save for later. Forgetting that on a corporate server. Nothing is ever truly private. I found a draft from 2 weeks ago. Subject line, the big day. It was addressed to his college roommate, a guy named Brad who worked in finance in New York. I opened it. Brad, you have to come. Seriously, I am pulling out all the stops. We booked the Grand View, Champagne Tower, the works. I know it sounds excessive, but trust me, it is an investment. The VP is going to be there. I need to look like I am already at his level. Once I lock in this director role, the salary bump will cover the debt in 6 months. No one checks the regional marketing budget anyway. It is free money if you know how to move it. Just come and watch the coronation. It is going to be legendary. No one checks. I highlighted the phrase, "It is free money." I highlighted that too. He wasn't just stealing, he was laughing at them. He was laughing at the company for being too stupid to catch him. He was laughing at our parents for being gullible enough to fund him. And he had laughed at me. He thought I was the useful sister, the one who was good with lists. He was right. I am excellent with lists, specifically, lists of indictable offenses. I hit print. The laser printer in the corner of my office whirred to life. It was a satisfying sound, rhythmic and relentless. It churned out the spreadsheets. It churned out the corporate registry filings of the fake companies. It churned out the bank transfer logs. It churned out the draft email. I watched the stack of paper grow. It was about an inch thick, an inch of compressed wood pulp that weighed more than my brother's entire life. I organized the documents with the precision of a surgeon. I used color-coded sticky tabs to mark the critical evidence: yellow for the fake clients, pink for the money trail, blue for the intent. I placed the stack in a heavy cream-colored presentation folder. It was the kind of folder you use to sign a merger deal or a treaty. I packed up my bag. I didn't say goodbye to anyone in the office. I walked out to the elevator, riding the silence down to the lobby. When I got home, Rodney was waiting. The apartment smelled of roasted chicken and rosemary. It was a normal smell, a domestic smell, totally at odds with the nuclear weapon I was carrying in my tote bag. I walked into the kitchen and placed the folder on the island. Rodney looked at it. He didn't have to ask what it was. "You found it," he said. "I found everything," I replied. He created a carousel of fake companies. He is stealing from Atlas Harbor to pay for the wedding, and he is stealing from Mom and Dad to cover the tracks at Atlas Harbor. It is a circle, and he is the only one winning. Rodney wiped his hands on a dish towel and walked over. He opened the folder. He flipped through the pages, his eyes scanning the highlighted sections. He stopped at the draft email. He read it twice. No one checks. He read aloud. He closed the folder gently. "So, what is the play?" he asked. "Do you call the police now? Do you call the company?" I looked at the folder. "If I call them now, the wedding is canceled." I said, "He gets arrested quietly. Mom and Dad will bail him out. They will sell the rest of the furniture to pay for a lawyer. They will say it was a misunderstanding. They will say I was vindictive. He will spin a story about how he was under pressure and he meant to pay it back. He will play the victim." I shook my head. "No, that is not enough. He needs to be exposed in a way that allows no spin, no narrative recovery." Rodney looked at me, his eyes dark and serious. "If you want to end this, Bella, truly end it, it has to be on the day he thinks he wins," he said. "It has to be when the lights are on him, when he feels untouchable. That is the only time he will be vulnerable enough to break." I looked at the calendar on the fridge. October 14th. I picked up a thick white envelope from our stationery drawer. I slid the presentation folder inside. I licked the adhesive strip and sealed it shut. It was a heavy, dense package. I took a black marker and wrote on the front of the envelope in my best calligraphy, "Wedding gift." I looked at Rodney. I am not just going to the wedding, I said. I am going to be the most helpful bridesmaid in history. I am going to make sure everything goes exactly according to plan, until it doesn't. Rodney smiled. A slow, grim smile. I will make sure the getaway car has a full tank, he said. I touched the envelope. It felt cold under my fingertips. See you at the altar. Cole, I whispered. The email from Cole arrived with a subject line that perfectly encapsulated our relationship. Here is the mess. Fix it. Attached was a zipped folder containing 23 separate PDF files. These were the vendor contracts, the lighting, the catering, the band, the venue, the floral arrangements, the vintage car rental. He had dumped the entire legal and financial infrastructure of his wedding into my inbox, because he was too busy being important to read the fine print. I was sitting at my kitchen island, a cup of lukewarm tea beside me. To Cole, this was administrative grunt work. To me, it was the blueprint of his destruction. I replied, "Got it. I will review for compliance and flag any issues." He sent back a thumbs-up emoji. He had no idea that he had just handed the prosecution the murder weapon. I opened the file for the Grandview estate first. It was a 30-page document, dense with legalese. Most people skim these things, looking only for the cancellation policy or the noise ordinance. I read every single line. I read it with the eyes of a fraud investigator who knows that the devil is not in the details. The devil is in the definitions. I found what I was looking for on page 18, subsection 4, paragraph C, clause of conduct and reputation. The venue reserves the right to terminate this agreement immediately, without refund of any deposits or prepayments, if the client or any principal member of the wedding party engages in conduct that is illegal, violent, or detrimental to the reputation of the Grandview estate. In the event of law enforcement intervention on the premises during the event, all security deposits shall be forfeited as liquidated damages. I read it twice. If Cole was arrested at the altar, or if federal agents stormed the reception, the venue would keep the money, every single cent. The $25,000 deposit my parents had stripped from their home equity, gone. The catering prepayment gone. It was harsh. It was brutal. And it was perfect. By signing this contract, Cole wasn't just risking his freedom. He was risking the very assets he had stolen to pay for the party. When the hammer dropped, I wanted to ensure there was no financial parachute. I wanted the consequences to be absolute. I highlighted the clause in my private notes, not to warn him, but to remember it. Then, I opened the master timeline spreadsheet. Cole had titled it, The Coronation. I wished I was joking. The schedule was tight. 5 o'clock ceremony, 5:45 cocktail hour, 6:30. Grand entrance, 7 o'clock toasts. I stared at the toasts section. Currently, it listed the best man Brad, the maid of honor Madison's sister, and our father. I clicked on the cell. I inserted a new row. 7:15 special tribute, professional excellence and vision, speaker guest of honor. I formatted it to look official. I knew Cole's ego. If I pitched this as a speech about how amazing he was at his job, he would never question it. He would assume the company insisted on it. He would assume he was being honored. I sent him a text. Hey. I smoothed out the flow. I added a slot for a professional tribute during dinner. Mom mentioned the VP might want to say a few words about your future at Atlas. Should I keep it? The response was immediate. Yes, obviously. Put it right before the cake cutting. Prime time. I smiled. The trap was set. I had just scheduled his indictment for 7:15 in the evening. While I was manipulating time, Rodney was managing space. He came into the apartment wearing his work boots, smelling of sawdust and rain. He had volunteered to do a site walkthrough with the venue coordinator earlier that afternoon, claiming he wanted to check the electrical load for the band. How did it go? I asked, not looking up from my screen. The place is a fortress, Rodney said, pouring himself a glass of water. 1 main entrance, 2 service exits in the kitchen, fire exits on the east and west wings. But they are alarmed. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and flattened it on the counter. It was a floor plan of the Grandview Estate Ballroom. He pointed to a set of double doors near the stage. "This is the staging area for the servers," he said. "It connects directly to the loading dock. If things get chaotic, this is the only way out that doesn't go through the main lobby." I traced the line with my finger. "And the cameras?" I asked. "Coverage is 90%, Rodney said. "They have domes in the corners and above the bar. But there is a blind spot here, near the tech booth. Why does that matter?" "Because that is where I'm going to stand," he said simply. "If your brother tries to blame anyone else, or if he tries to stash anything, I want to be the one watching from the shadows. I am not there to start a fight. Bella, I am there to make sure the truth doesn't get lost in the panic." I looked at him, my sturdy, reliable Rodney. He wasn't plotting revenge. He was engineering safety. He was building the containment unit for the explosion I was about to trigger. Just then, my phone rang. It was Cole. "Belle." He barked, not bothering with a hello. "I need you to come by the apartment. I have some paperwork." "Madison is too stressed to handle. I will be there in 20 minutes, I said. When I arrived at their luxury apartment, a place they leased for $4,000 a month, likely paid for by the slush fund, Cole was pacing the living room. Madison was on the sofa, scrolling through Instagram with a look of manic boredom. Cole didn't offer me water. He pointed to a stack of papers on the glass coffee table. "These are the final confirmations for the vendor add-ons," he said. "The ice sculpture, the cigar roller, the extra lighting. The vendors are being annoying about liability. They want a secondary signature confirming the cost overages." I picked up the document. Vendor cost confirmation and liability acceptance. It was a standard form, usually signed by the event planner, but the language was tricky. By signing, the countersigner acknowledged the accuracy of the costs and accepted joint responsibility for disputed charges. Cole was trying to hedge. He knew, deep down in his lizard brain, that money was tight. If his cards were declined on the day of, he wanted a backup payer. He wanted me. "Just sign it, Belle," he said, checking his watch. "It is just a formality. Mom said you are handling logistics. This is logistics." I looked at him. He was wearing that smug, dismissive expression I had known my whole life. "And where is Rodney?" he asked, looking around as if expecting my fiancé to pop out of a wall. "Did he not come? I have a dimmer switch in the bedroom that is acting up. I thought maybe the repair guy could take a look since he is marrying into the family." Madison snickered from the couch. "He is busy," I said, keeping my voice even. "He has a business to run." "Right," Cole laughed. "A business. Fixing porches. Cute." He tapped the paper. "Sign it, Belle. I have a dinner reservation in an hour." I looked at the paper. If I refused, he would get suspicious. He would say I was being difficult. He might lock me out of the planning, and I would lose my access to the timeline and the bank accounts. I had to sign, but I wasn't going to sign my name. Not really. I pulled out my tablet. "I will do it digitally." I said, "It is faster for the vendors. I can email it directly to them right now." Cole shrugged. "Whatever. Just get it done. Spreadsheet girl. Spreadsheet girl." I opened the document app. I uploaded the PDF. I zoomed in on the signature line. I used my stylus to sign. But before I flattened the file, I opened the metadata panel of the digital signature block. In the field marked Signer Comments and Conditional Acceptance, a hidden layer of code that forensic accountants check but normal people never see, I typed a specific string of text. "Signature valid solely upon verification of legal funds. Signer assumes no financial liability for costs incurred through fraudulent instruments. Date October 10th, 2026. I flattened the file. On the surface, it looked like a standard signature Bella Cooper. But in a court of law, that metadata was a shield. It proved that my acceptance was conditional on the legality of the transaction. Since the transaction was funded by fraud, my signature was void the moment he committed the crime. I hit send. Done. I said. Cole didn't even say thank you. He just grabbed his jacket. Great. Lock up on your way out. I waited until the elevator doors closed. Then I stood in the center of his living room. I looked at the expensive art on the walls. Rented. I looked at the designer furniture. Leased. It was all a stage set, and I was about to drop the curtain. I went back to my car, but I didn't go home. I drove to a coffee shop with secure Wi-Fi. I had one last move to make for the day. I opened my laptop and logged into a burner email account I had created. I pulled up the contact list for Atlas Harbor Systems. I wasn't looking for Cole's friends. I was looking for the people he feared. I found the email address for the Regional Director of Risk Management. I found the email for the Head of Internal Audit. And just for good measure, I found the email for the VP of Sales, the man Cole was trying to impress. I composed an invitation. Subject invitation. Strategic networking at the Cooper wedding celebration. Dear team, in honor of the record-breaking performance of the Northeast Division, Mr. Cole Cooper graciously invites the leadership team to join his wedding celebration for a special industry tribute. This event will serve as an informal opportunity to discuss the future of the division and celebrate our shared success. Date October 14th. Time, 7 o'clock. Location Grandview Estate. It was brilliant because it played on corporate vanity. Executives love a strategic networking event. They love being honored. They would not see this as crashing a wedding. They would see it as a work obligation with an open bar, but by inviting the audit and risk teams. I was ensuring that the people who could recognize the fraud were in the room. When I put the evidence on the screen, I didn't want a room full of confused relatives. I wanted a room full of sharks who knew exactly what a fake vendor invoice looked like. I hit send. I sat back and watched the sent confirmation appear. The pieces were on the board. I had the evidence. I had the timeline. I had the legal cover. I had the witnesses. And I had the security. I looked at the calendar on my laptop. 4 days. 4 days until my brother stood on a stage and waited for his coronation. He thought he was building a dynasty. He didn't realize he was standing on a trapdoor. I closed my laptop. I drove home to Rodney. When I walked in, he was studying the floor plan again, marking camera angles with a red pen. He looked up. "Is it done?" he asked. I nodded. "I invited the wolves," I said, "and I made sure the sheep are locked in." Rodney capped his pen. "Then we wait," he said. I looked out the window at the Pittsburgh skyline. Somewhere out there, Cole was probably toasting to his own genius, thinking he had pulled off the heist of the century. "Enjoy the champagne, brother," I whispered. "It is the last expensive thing you will ever taste." I had underestimated Madison Rowe for the last year. I had categorized my brother's fiancée as a decorative object. She was a woman who spoke exclusively in hashtags and seemed to believe that the depth of a person's soul was directly correlated to the thread count of their linens. I thought she was a victim in waiting, another person Cole would charm, use, and eventually bankrupt. I was wrong. Madison was not a victim. She was a shareholder. The text came at 2 p.m, while I was finalizing the forensic timeline at my office. "Meet me at the Obsidian Room, 3 o'clock, alone." The Obsidian Room was a coffee bar in the lobby of a boutique hotel downtown. It was the kind of place where a latte cost $12 and the silence was heavy with corporate secrets. When I arrived, Madison was already there. She was sitting in a high-backed velvet chair, wearing a cream-colored blazer that looked tailored to within an inch of its life. Her posture was perfect. She didn't look like a stressed bride. She looked like a CEO negotiating a merger. "Bella," she said, not standing up. She gestured to the empty chair opposite her. "Sit." I sat. "I didn't order anything. Is there a problem with the vendor payments?" I asked, playing my role of the dutiful, logistical sister. Madison smiled. It was a terrifying smile because it didn't reach her eyes. It just stretched the skin over her cheekbones. "Cut the act. Bella," she said softly. Her voice was low, stripped of the bubbly, high-pitched tone she used at family dinners. "We are not in front of your mother now. You can stop pretending you are just trying to help, and I will stop pretending I like you." I leaned back, crossing my arms. "Okay." Madison picked up her cup, her eyes locking onto mine over the rim. "I know what you do," she said. "I work in administration." I lied smoothly. She set the cup down. No, you don't. I did a little digging. You are a contractor for Blackridge Integrity Partners. You specialize in fraud detection and asset recovery. You are not a secretary. Bella, you are a bloodhound. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper that was sharper than a knife. And I know you have been digging into coal. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my face remained impassive. I have been helping with the wedding planning. That involves looking at contracts. Madison let out a short, dismissive laugh. Cole is an idiot, she said. She said it with the casual frankness of discussing the weather. He is sloppy. He thinks he is a genius because he can move numbers around on a spreadsheet, but he leaves tracks everywhere. I know he is leveraging the house. I know about the creative accounting at Atlas Harbor. I stared at her. You know? Of course I know, she scoffed. Do you think I would marry a man without vetting his financials? I know exactly what he is doing. He is borrowing from tomorrow to pay for today. Then why are you marrying him? I asked, genuinely baffled. If you know he's a fraud, why are you walking down that aisle? Madison looked at me with a pitying expression. Because he is going to win. Bella, that is what you don't understand. Men like Cole always fail upwards. He just needs to get through this weekend. Once he secures the director position, the salary bump covers the holes. The stock options vest. The debt disappears. He becomes legitimate. She tapped her manicured fingernails on the marble table. I am not marrying Cole for who he is right now, she said. I am marrying the lifestyle he is about to secure. I am investing in the potential. And I am not going to let a jealous, bitter little sister wreck my investment 3 days before the payout. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small, velvet box. She slid it across the table. I didn't open it. What is this, a peace offering? She said. Or a severance package. Call it what you want. I opened the box. Inside was a pair of diamond earrings. They were heavy, expensive. Stay quiet, Madison said. Let the wedding happen. Let him get the promotion. Once we are married, I will make sure he leaves you alone. I will make sure he stops asking your parents for money. I will manage him. That is the deal. You get your freedom. I get my husband. And the family reputation stays intact. I looked at the diamonds. They glittered under the recessed lighting. They represented everything I despised. They were likely bought with stolen money, offered as a bribe to cover up the theft. I snapped the box shut. I slid it back across the table. No, I said. Madison's eyes narrowed. Don't be stupid, Bella. If you blow this up, you don't just hurt him, you destroy your parents. You destroy the family name. Do you really hate him that much? It is not about hate. Madison, I said, standing up, it is about math. The equation doesn't balance, and I am done being the one who covers the deficit. Madison stood up too. She was taller than me in her heels, looming over the table. If you ruin my day, she hissed, losing her composure for the first time, I will make it my mission to bury you. You think you are the only one who can play dirty. I have friends in this city too. I leaned in close. Then you better tell your friends to bring their lawyers, I whispered. I turned and walked out of the hotel. I could feel her eyes burning into my back. A laser of pure, unadulterated ambition. I had thought Cole was the villain. I realized now he was just the weapon. Madison was the hand aiming him. By the time I got back to my apartment, the war had moved from the coffee shop to the digital front. I unlocked my phone to find a barrage of notifications. Alert multiple failed login attempts on your Google account. Alert password reset requested for your iCloud. Alert suspicious activity detected on your bank profile. They were trying to lock me out, or maybe they were trying to find what I had. I sat at my desk and watched the logs. The IP addresses were bouncing all over the world. Russia, China, Brazil. But that was just a VPN cloaking service. The timing was too coincidental. Madison had made a threat, and 2 hours later, my digital life was under siege. I wasn't worried about them getting in. My security was military grade, but the sheer volume of the attack was designed to cause panic. It was a psychological drumbeat. We are watching. We are coming. Rodney walked in the door carrying 2 large duffel bags. He took one look at my screen, saw the red alert banners, and nodded grimly. "Grab the hard drives," he said. "We are leaving." "Where are we going?" I asked. "I rented a place," he said. "A short-term rental in Shadyside. It is under a fake name. Cash payment. I already moved your dress and my suit there this morning." I looked at him, surprised. "You did what Bella," he said, dropping the bags. "They are desperate. Desperate people do stupid things. If they can't hack you, they might come here. They have keys to this apartment, don't they?" "Dad has a spare key?" I froze. Yes, Dad had a spare key for emergencies. "We are not sleeping here tonight," Rodney said firmly. "I am not letting your brother or your parents waltz in here at 3 in the morning to look for your laptop." He was right. The sanctuary was compromised. We packed with efficient speed. I took the wedding gift envelope. I took the external drives containing the backup evidence. I took the laptop. 20 minutes later, we were in a nondescript sedan, driving through the rain to a small carriage house on a quiet street. It felt less like a wedding week and more like a witness protection relocation. We settled in. The rental was cozy, smelling of lavender and old wood. Rodney ordered takeout from a place across town, just to be safe. We were eating in silence when my phone rang. It was my father. I hesitated. It was 9 o'clock at night. I put the phone on speaker. "Dad, Bella." His voice was thin, shaking. It sounded like he had been crying, or drinking, or both. "What is wrong?" I asked. "It is your mother." He said, She did something today." I felt a cold dread uncurl in my stomach. "What did she do?" "We were at the bank," he stammered. "The wedding costs, they are higher than we thought. The caterer demanded another $10,000 for the service charge. We didn't have the liquidity. The refinance money is tied up in the venue deposit." And I pressed. "She tried to take out a bridge loan," he whispered. "A short-term personal loan. High interest. But our credit after the mortgage hit. Our score dropped. They wouldn't approve it." I closed my eyes. I knew what was coming. "So she put you down as the co-signer," he said. "She used your social security number. She said you wouldn't mind. She said you are family. She said you have good credit and you would want to help Cole." I looked at Rodney. His face had gone pale with anger. "Did the loan go through, Dad?" I asked, my voice deadly calm. "No," he said. "The banker, he said there was a freeze on your credit report. He couldn't process it. Your mother was furious. She made a scene. She told the banker you must have done it by mistake." "It wasn't a mistake," I said. Silence. "Bella," he said, his voice cracking. "She was going to forge your signature. She had the pen in her hand. If the credit hadn't been frozen," he trailed off. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Dad?" I asked. "Because I am scared," he admitted. "I am scared. Bella, we are drowning. We have signed everything away. The house, the retirement, and now she is trying to drag you down with us. This wedding, it is eating us alive." "Then stop it," I said. "Cancel it." "I can't," he sobbed. "She won't let me. Cole won't let me. They say we are too deep in. They say once he gets the promotion, he will fix it all, but I don't believe them anymore." I listened to my father's weeping on the other end of the line. For years, I had wanted him to wake up. I had wanted him to see the reality. But now that he saw it, he was still paralyzed. He was a passenger in a car driven by a madman, and he was calling me to complain about the speed. But he wouldn't grab the wheel. "I am sorry." "Dad," I said. I hung up. I sat there, staring at the phone. They had tried to steal my identity. It wasn't enough that they took my college fund. It wasn't enough that they took my time. It wasn't enough that they tried to take my wedding date. They had walked into a bank and tried to shackle me to their debt without my consent. My mother, the woman who gave birth to me, had held a pen over a dotted line, ready to forge my name to pay for my brother's champagne. I felt something inside me snap. Not a break, but a release. The final tether of guilt. the last thin wire of obligation that connected me to them. Severed. Rodney took my hand. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. I checked the credit monitoring app on my phone. Alert credit inquiry blocked. Attempted by quick cash lenders. They had tried to sell me to a loan shark. I stood up and walked to the window. The rain was hammering against the glass. I am not just exposing him, I said to the reflection in the window. Rodney looked at me. I am going to burn the whole fantasy to the ground. I said, I am going to make sure that when Sunday morning comes, they have nowhere to hide, no house to retreat to, no job to brag about, no reputation to stand on. I turned back to Rodney. Madison thinks this is a negotiation. Mom thinks this is a logistical hurdle. Dad thinks this is a tragedy. I walked over to the table and picked up the wedding gift envelope. They don't realize it is an eviction notice. I looked at the date on my watch. 2 days. I am ready. I said. Rodney poured 2 glasses of cheap wine. To the truth, he said, raising his glass. I clinked my glass against his. To the consequences, I replied. October 14th. Broke with a sky the color of bruised steel. It was a classic Pittsburgh morning, crisp and unsentimental. My mother had predicted rain. She had texted me 3 times in the last week to remind me that rain on a wedding day was good luck. A transparent attempt to preemptively spin the weather for Cole's benefit, but there was no rain. There was only a sharp, biting wind that stripped the last of the autumn leaves from the trees. I woke up at 6 o'clock. Not because of an alarm, but because my internal clock knew that today was the pivot point of my life. Rodney was already awake. He was sitting on the edge of the bed in our rental house, polishing his shoes. He looked up when I stirred, his face breaking into a slow, easy smile. Happy wedding day, he said. Happy wedding day. I whispered back. We did not rush. There was no frantic team of makeup artists, no screaming mother, no timeline printed on cardstock. We drank coffee out of mismatched mugs. We ate toast standing in the kitchen. At 9 o'clock, we drove to a small stone chapel in the Strip District. It was an old building, tucked between a warehouse and a coffee roaster. The kind of place you would miss if you were not looking for it. We had rented it for 1 hour. The cost was $200. There were only 5 people in the room. Me, Rodney, the officiant, and our 2 witnesses, Rodney's sister, Sarah, and her husband, Mike. I wore a white slip dress I had bought off the rack for $150. It was silk, simple, and cut on the bias, so it moved like water when I walked. I held a bouquet of white anemones that Rodney had picked up from the flower market that morning. Rodney wore a navy suit he had owned for years, but he had bought a new tie, a deep forest green. When I walked down the short aisle, there was no organ music, just the sound of the city waking up outside, the distant rumble of a delivery truck, the hiss of the coffee roaster next door. It felt real. It felt grounded. We stood at the altar, holding hands. His palms were warm. Mine were cold. We did not write long. Flowery vows. We had agreed that the truth did not need adjectives. Rodney looked at me, his eyes dark and serious. Bella, he said, his voice steady. I promise to be your partner, not your savior, not your anchor, but your partner. I promise to stand beside you when you fight, and to hold you when you rest. I love you for who you are, not for what you can do for me. I took a deep breath. I looked at this man who had seen the worst of my family and had never once asked me to apologize for them. Rodney, I said, I promise to build a life that is ours. I promise to protect our peace. I choose you. I paused, squeezing his hand, and, I added, looking him dead in the eye, I choose myself. The officiant smiled. He pronounced us husband and wife. We kissed. It was not a performative kiss for a camera. It was a seal on a contract. We signed the license on a small wooden table. The ink was still wet when we walked out into the cold morning air. We are married, Rodney said, checking his watch. It is 10:15 in the morning. We are married. I agreed. We went to a diner down the street for lunch. We sat in a booth, still in our wedding clothes, eating pancakes and bacon while the world rushed by outside. We laughed. We actually laughed. For an hour. I forgot about the folder in my bag. I forgot about Cole. I forgot about the looming explosion. I just existed in the bubble of being Mrs. Jensen. But bubbles pop. At 1 o'clock. We went back to the rental house. The transformation began. I took off the white silk dress. I hung it carefully in the closet, a relic of the morning's peace. I put on the costume for the evening. It was a floor-length gown in midnight blue, structured and severe. It had long sleeves and a high neck. But the back was open. It was a dress that said, "I am here to work, but also I am dangerous." I pulled my hair back into a tight, low bun. I applied makeup with the precision of war paint, sharp eyeliner, a matte red lip. Rodney changed into a black tuxedo. He checked the inner pocket of his jacket. He had a small flash drive there. A backup of the backup. I walked to the table where the wedding gift envelope lay. It was thick, heavy. Inside was the forensic audit of Cole's life, the fake vendors, the stolen mortgage funds, the Atlas Harbor kickbacks, the timeline of the fraud. I opened the flap one last time, just to check. The pages were crisp. The highlighted sections were neon yellow, screaming for attention. I saw the email printout where Cole bragged that no one checks. I saw the bank transfer log showing the $50,000 from my father's 401k moving into Cole's shell company. I closed the envelope. I resealed it. "I'm not doing this out of spite," I said aloud, mostly to myself. Rodney walked over and placed his hands on my shoulders. "No," he said, "you are not. You are doing this because they left you no choice. But listen to me, Bella." He turned me around so I had to look at him. "Tonight is going to be chaos. When we walk into that room, the energy is going to be frantic. Your mother is going to be manic. Cole is going to be insufferable." "I know." I said, "Don't let the anger drive." Rodney said, "Anger is messy. Anger makes mistakes. Let the truth drive. The truth is cold. The truth is steady. You are just the messenger." I nodded. "Let the truth drive." My phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from my mother. Text from Mom. "Where are you? Guests are arriving in 2 hours. I need you near the stage. Cole is nervous about the sound system. He needs you to handle the microphone handoffs during the speeches. Do not mess this up." I stared at the screen. It was almost poetic. They wanted me to handle the microphone. They wanted me to control the volume. They were literally handing me the instrument of their own exposure. "I am on my way." I typed back. We left the rental house at 3:30. We drove to the Grandview Estate. The venue was imposing. It was a sprawling mansion on a hill overlooking the city, with manicured lawns and a fountain that probably cost more than my education. The parking lot was already filling up with vendor trucks and early arrivals. I saw the florist's van, the one Cole had forced me to pay the deposit for. I saw the catering trucks. We parked in the back, near the loading dock. Just as Rodney had planned, we walked in through the service entrance. The kitchen was a hive of activity. Chefs were shouting orders. Servers were polishing silverware. I moved through the chaos like a ghost. I knew the timeline. I knew the layout. I walked into the main ballroom. It was breathtaking, in a nauseating sort of way. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. The tables were set with gold-rimmed plates and towers of white hydrangeas. A 10-piece band was setting up on the stage. In the center of the room was a massive ice sculpture. It was carved in the shape of the Atlas Harbor logo, a stylized anchor. Cole wasn't just celebrating a marriage. He was celebrating a merger. He was marrying his job. I scanned the room with my investigator's eyes. Exits, clear. Security cameras. 3 visible domes. 1 blind spot near the audio booth. VIP, table front and center, right next to the stage. That was where the vice president of Atlas Harbor would sit. That was where the wedding gift would eventually land. I saw the audio technician adjusting a microphone stand. I walked over. "Hi," I said. "I am the groom's sister. I am handling the run of show." The tech looked relieved. "Oh, thank God. No one has given me a cue sheet." I handed him a printed sheet. Here's the updated timeline. At 7:15, there is a special industry tribute. I will be bringing a guest speaker up. I need the mic hot and the house lights up at that exact moment. Got it, he said. 7:15, mic hot. I stepped back. The trap was primed. Suddenly, I felt a presence behind me. Well, look who decided to show up. I turned around. Cole was standing there. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him perfectly, likely because it was bespoke. He had a glass of scotch in one hand. His hair was coiffed. He looked every inch the golden boy. He looked at my dress. Nice, he said, sipping his drink. A bit dark for a wedding, isn't it? But at least you are not trying to outshine the bride. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I just looked at him. Is everything ready? I asked. Everything is perfect, he said, sweeping his arm toward the room. The VP just texted. He is 10 minutes out. This is it. Belle, this is the night everything changes. He stepped closer, invading my personal space. I could smell the expensive scotch on his breath. You know, he said, lowering his voice. Mom was worried you were going to pull a stunt. She thought you might try to make today about you. But I told her. Bella knows the score. You finally realize that this family works better when you just play your part. He smirked. Finally. You know your position. The words hung in the air between us. You know your position. He meant beneath him. He meant in the background. He meant subservient. I felt a flash of heat in my chest, the old anger trying to flare up, but then I remembered Rodney's voice. Let the truth drive. I looked at Cole. I looked at the brother I had protected, funded, and excused for 3 decades, and I realized he was right. I did know my position. My position was lead investigator, and he was the subject. I smiled. It was a genuine smile, sharp as cut glass. You are right. Cole, I said softly. I know exactly where I stand. He patted my shoulder. A condescending tap-tap. Good girl. Now, go check on the seating chart. I think Aunt Sarah is too close to the bar. He turned and walked away, strutting toward the entrance to greet his adoring public. I watched him go. I reached into my bag and touched the thick envelope. I walked over to the gift table. It was piled high with boxes wrapped in silver and gold paper. There were cards with cash, blenders, crystal vases. I took the white envelope with wedding gift written in black calligraphy. I placed it right in the center of the table. It looked innocent. It looked like a check. It looked like love. It was a demolition charge. I smoothed my dress. I checked my watch. 4:55. The ceremony was about to begin. I turned and walked toward the crowd of guests. I saw my parents near the front, looking anxious and proud. I saw Madison's family. I saw the executives from Atlas Harbor arriving in their dark suits. I stepped into the stream of people. I didn't look like a victim. I didn't look like a tool. I looked like a woman who had already set the timer and was just waiting for the tick-tick boom. The ballroom smelled of expensive lilies and unearned confidence. It was a sensory overload of crystal shimmering under the lights, the clinking of heavy silverware against porcelain, and the murmur of 300 guests who had been fed filet mignon and the lie of the Cooper family success story. The 10-piece band was playing a smooth jazz cover of a pop song, the kind of music designed to make people feel wealthy and detached. Cole was vibrating. He moved through the crowd not like a groom, but like a politician on election night who has already seen the exit polls. He held a glass of champagne in one hand and gripped the shoulders of powerful men with the other. Laughing too loudly at jokes that were not funny, I stood in the shadows near the stage, checking the audio board. The timeline I had manipulated was ticking down. 7:14. Cole spotted me. He excused himself from a circle of admirers and beelined for me. He grabbed my elbow, his fingers digging into the silk of my dress. Watch this, he hissed, his eyes wide and manic. He gestured toward the double doors at the back of the room. The doors opened. A man walked in. He was in his 60s, silver-haired, wearing a suit that cost more than the venue's rental fee. It was Arthur Sterling, the executive vice president of Atlas Harbor Systems, the man Cole had built this entire charade to impress. He came. Cole whispered, his voice trembling with excitement. He actually came. This is it. Bella. Tones tonight. They announced the directorship. They are going to crown me right here. He looked at me with a sneer of triumph. Just try not to mess up the microphone handoff. Okay, do something right for once. I looked at my brother. I looked at the sweat beading on his upper lip, the desperate hunger in his eyes. I won't miss a beat, I said. Cole adjusted his tie and strode toward the center of the room. He tapped a spoon against his glass. The sharp, high-pitched ting-ting-ting cut through the chatter. The band stopped playing. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to the golden boy. Ladies and gentlemen, Cole announced, his voice booming, if I could have your attention, we are honored tonight to have a very special guest, a mentor, a leader, and the man who steers the ship at Atlas Harbor. Please welcome Mr. Arthur Sterling. The applause was polite but enthusiastic. Arthur Sterling walked up the steps to the stage. He took the microphone Cole offered him. He didn't smile. Cole stood slightly behind him, beaming, waiting for the praise to rain down. Thank you, Sterling said. His voice was deep, gravelly. It was the voice of a man who signed termination letters without blinking. We at Atlas Harbor pride ourselves on certain values. Sterling continued, innovation, growth, but above all, integrity. The truth is the bedrock of our business. Without truth, the numbers on a spreadsheet are just fiction. Cole nodded vigorously, looking like a bobblehead. He thought this was the preamble to his promotion. Tonight, Sterling said, looking out at the crowd, we are here to celebrate, but we are also here to correct the record. Sometimes, the most important work we do is the work that happens in the shadows, ensuring that our company remains clean. Sterling turned. He didn't look at Cole. He looked directly at me. I would like to invite the lead investigator on our internal audit team to join me on stage, Sterling said, Ms. Bella Cooper. The silence that followed was not the silence of anticipation. It was the silence of a vacuum, as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. Cole froze. His smile didn't fall. It just fossilized, trapped in a rictus of confusion. I stepped out of the shadows. My midnight blue dress caught the stage lights. I walked up the stairs. The sound of my heels on the wood was the only noise in the room. I took the microphone from Sterling. I didn't look at my parents. I didn't look at the guests. I looked at the laptop connected to the projector screen. The projector Cole had set up to show a montage of his life. I hit a key. The slideshow of baby photos disappeared. In its place, a high-resolution graphic appeared. It was a flowchart titled, Atlas Harbor Systems Forensic Audit of Misappropriated Funds, Northeast Division. The crowd gasped. It was a collective, sharp intake of breath. My name is Bella Cooper, I said, my voice steady, amplified through the speakers. I am a senior forensic analyst for Black Ridge Integrity Partners. For the last 4 days, I have been tracking a series of financial irregularities linked to the sales accounts of this division. I clicked the remote. The screen changed. It showed a list of companies. Apex Global Logistics, Stratosphere Consulting. These are not clients. I said, these are shell entities. They have no physical address, no employees, no operations. They exist for one purpose, only to generate fake invoices. I clicked again. The screen showed a bank transfer log. The amounts were highlighted in red. $600,000 in fraudulent commissions were paid out based on these fake contracts, I explained, and 80% of those funds were immediately funneled into a private holding company called Vertex Solutions. I clicked again. The screen showed the registration documents for Vertex Solutions, and right next to it, the wedding gift evidence, the check images from the wedding vendor deposits. The money trail leads here, I said, gesturing to the room, the flowers, the champagne, the band. This entire event is funded by stolen capital. I looked at my mother in the front row. She was standing up, her hand over her mouth, her face the color of ash. My father was slumped in his chair, staring at the floor. Cole finally found his voice. It was a strangled, high-pitched squeak. She is lying, he screamed, lunging toward me. She is jealous. She is crazy. Cut the mic. Someone cut the mic. He grabbed for the microphone, but Arthur Sterling stepped in between us. Sterling was an older man, but he was solid. He blocked Cole with a look of pure disgust. Sit down, Mr. Cooper, Sterling commanded. Cole stumbled back, looking around the room for an ally. He looked at Madison. Madison was sitting at the head table. She wasn't crying. She was gripping the stem of her wine glass so hard her knuckles were white. Her eyes were darting around the room, calculating, assessing damage. It's not true, Cole yelled to the crowd. It's a misunderstanding. I was managing the accounts. I clicked the remote one last time. The screen showed the email draft, the one I had found in his work folder. No one checks. It is free money. The words loomed over the stage. 10 feet tall. Cole turned to look at the screen. He seemed to shrink physically. The air went out of him. The arrogance evaporated, leaving only a small, terrified thief in a rented tuxedo. Suddenly, Madison stood up. She grabbed the table microphone that was meant for the toasts. I didn't know she shouted, her voice shrill. Everyone, listen to me. I am a victim here. He told me the bonus was legitimate. She pointed a shaking finger at Cole. He told me the $50,000 for the catering came from his stock options, she yelled. He never told me he took it from the Vertex account. The room froze again. I turned to Madison. I smiled. I never mentioned the catering amount. Madison, I said into the mic, and I never mentioned that Vertex was the source of that specific payment. Madison's eyes went wide. She realized her mistake. By denying the specific details, she had admitted she knew the details. She knew about Vertex. She knew the amounts. She had just confessed to being an accessory. The doors at the back of the room burst open. It wasn't a cake delivery. 6 men in windbreakers walked in, on the back of their jackets. In bright yellow letters, FBI. Blackridge had notified federal authorities the moment the total theft crossed the $500,000 mark. This was wire fraud. This was money laundering. This was federal jurisdiction. Cole saw them. The fight-or-flight response took over. He didn't fight. He ran. He leaped off the stage, knocking over a flower arrangement. Water and glass shattered across the dance floor. He sprinted toward the side exit, the one near the kitchen, but he didn't know the layout as well as Rodney did. Rodney stepped out from the shadows near the tech booth. He didn't tackle Cole. He didn't have to. He simply slid a heavy equipment case into the aisle. Cole, blinded by panic, tripped over the case. He went down hard, face-planting onto the parquet floor. Before he could scramble up, 2 agents were on him. Get off me, Cole screamed, thrashing like a fish on a deck. Do you know who I am? I am a director. I am a director. Stop resisting, an agent shouted, pinning Cole's arms behind his back. The click of handcuffs echoed through the silent ballroom. It was louder than the band had ever been. Cole was hauled to his feet. His nose was bleeding, staining his white shirt. His hair was a mess. He looked at me, his eyes wild with confusion and hate. You did this, he shrieked, spitting blood. You ruined my life. I looked down at him from the stage. No. Cole, I said calmly, you ruined it. I just turned on the lights. Another pair of agents moved toward the head table. They approached Madison. Ms. Rowe. We need to ask you some questions about the Vertex accounts. One agent said. Madison didn't scream. She looked at the handcuffs on Cole, then at the agents. She looked at the guests who were now filming everything on their phones. Her social status was incinerating in real time. She slumped into her chair, defeated. Then, the screaming started. It wasn't Cole. It was my mother. She wasn't running to her son. She was running to the venue manager, a man named Henri, who was standing near the bar with a clipboard. The money, she shrieked, clutching Henri's lapel. We paid the deposit, $25,000, and the catering. We want a refund. The wedding is ruined. Give us the money back. My father was right behind her, his face purple. We demand a refund. This is a breach of service. Henri looked at them. He looked at the FBI agents dragging the groom out the side door. He looked at the smashed flowers on the floor. He opened his folder. He pulled out the contract I had made Cole sign, the contract I had made sure was airtight. "I am sorry, madam," Henri said, his voice cold and professional. "But I must refer you to Clause 18, Paragraph C." He tapped the paper. "Criminal Conduct and Reputation Clause." Henri read aloud. "In the event of law enforcement intervention or criminal acts by the client, all deposits are forfeited as liquidated damages." My mother stopped screaming. She stared at the paper. "Forfeited," she whispered. "Gone." Henri said, "And you will be billed for the damage to the floor and the floral arrangements." My mother turned to look at me. Her eyes were hollow. The reality was finally hitting her. The house was mortgaged. The retirement was gone. The deposit was gone. The son was in handcuffs. "Bella," she gasped, "do something. Fix this. You are good with contracts. Fix this." She was still doing it, even now, standing in the wreckage of her own enabling. She was ordering me to clean it up. I walked down the stairs from the stage. I walked right up to her. I looked at my mother. I looked at my father. I saw them not as monsters, but as small, sad people who had bet everything on a lie and lost. I reached into my bag. I pulled out the original contract copy I had kept. I held it up. "I can't fix it." "Mom," I said. I pointed to the signature at the bottom. Cole's signature. "He signed it," I said. "He read it, and he signed it." I dropped the paper on the table in front of her. "This is the first time in his life," I said, my voice quiet but caring in the silence, "that what you people signed actually has consequences." I turned around. Rodney was waiting for me by the exit. He held out his hand. I took it. We walked out of the ballroom, past the stunned guests, past the FBI agents, past the ruin of the Cooper dynasty. We walked out into the cool night air. Leaving the noise and the shame behind us, the fallout from the wedding was not a sudden explosion. It was more like watching a controlled demolition in slow motion. The dust settled over the city of Pittsburgh, coating the reputation of the Cooper family in a layer of gray ash that no amount of spinning could clean away. Cole was indicted on 12 counts of federal wire fraud, 3 counts of money laundering, and 1 count of aggravated identity theft. The coronation he had planned became the lead anecdote in business ethics seminars across the state. They didn't call it a tragedy, they called it the Golden Boy Ponzi scheme. The image of him being led out of the ballroom in handcuffs, tripping over a sound case, was not just a news clip. It was the final, humiliating period at the end of his career. Madison Rowe did exactly what I expected a woman of her calculation to do. She didn't stand by her man. She cut her losses, within 48 hours of the arrest. Her lawyer had arranged a meeting with the prosecution. She offered up every password, every hidden account, and every conversation she had overheard about the Vertex Shell Company. She claimed she was a victim of Cole's manipulation. A naive bride blinded by love, the law gave her a pass, granting her immunity in exchange for her testimony. But society was not as forgiving. The friends she had cultivated, the social circle she had tried so desperately to climb into, dropped her with brutal efficiency. Her engagement was broken. Her reputation was radioactive. And the last I heard, she had moved to Ohio to live with an aunt, changing her last name back to something anonymous. She had bet on the wrong stock, and the market had corrected itself. For my parents, the correction was fatal. The cash-out refinance they had signed, the one that stripped the equity from our childhood home to pay for the crystal and the champagne, was a legal debt. The bank did not care that the wedding ended in an arrest. The bank only cared about the mortgage payments, and without the retirement fund my father had liquidated, they had no way to pay. The foreclosure notice arrived 3 weeks after the wedding. My mother tried to call me the day it was taped to the front door. I let it go to voicemail. She left a message. It wasn't an apology. It was a scream. "How could you do this to us?" she yelled into the phone. You knew, and you let us spend the money. You let us lose the house. This is your fault. Bella, you destroyed this family. I sat at my kitchen table, listening to the recording. Rodney was sitting across from me, drinking coffee. She is still rewriting history, Rodney said quietly. I deleted the message. I am not a character in her story anymore, I said. I did not go to see them. I did not offer to pay the mortgage. I did not offer them a guest room in our apartment. That sounds cruel to people who have never been the scapegoat. But to those who have, it sounds like survival. I sent an email instead. It was short. I will not bail you out. I will not argue with you. If you want to see me, it will be on my terms. And the topic of money is permanently off the table. If you blame me for Cole's crimes, do not contact me at all. They didn't reply. They were too busy trying to salvage the furniture before the bank took possession. But the final blow, the true twist of the knife, came from the evidence box I had handed over to the FBI. 2 months after the arrest, the lead agent called me into his office. He looked tired. He had a file open on his desk. We found something in the vendor contracts. Mrs. Jensen, he said. I sat up straighter. What is it? He slid a document across the desk. It was the vendor cost confirmation form. The one Cole had forced me to sign in his living room. The one he thought made me liable for the cost overages. Your brother tried to use this. The agent said, when we seized his files, we found a loan application for $50,000 from a predatory lender. It was dated 3 days before the wedding. He used this document as proof that you were a co-guarantor. He was trying to take out a high-interest loan in your name to cover the cash flow gap. I felt a cold chill. Cole had tried to frame me for his debt even before the handcuffs went on. He was going to leave me with a $50,000 bill while he played the hero. But, the agent continued, tapping the paper, the lender rejected it. And do you know why I smiled? A small, sharp smile. Because of the signature, I asked. The agent nodded, looking impressed. Because of the metadata, he corrected. When the lender's automated system scanned the PDF, it picked up a conditional logic script embedded in the signature block. Signature valid solely upon verification of legal funds. Since the funds listed on the application were flagged as suspicious by the credit bureau, your signature automatically invalidated itself. It essentially self-destructed. He leaned back. We have never seen that before, the agent said. It saved you from a massive headache, and it gave us the final piece of evidence to prove premeditated identity fraud. He wasn't just sloppy, he was maliciously trying to entrap you. That added another 2 years to his sentence recommendation. I looked at the document. I remembered sitting in the coffee shop, typing that code, wondering if I was being paranoid. I wasn't paranoid. I was prepared. The legal process ground on. Cole pleaded guilty to avoid a public trial that would have humiliated him further. He was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. My firm, Black Ridge Integrity Partners, received a substantial payout from Atlas Harbor for the recovery of the stolen assets. As the lead investigator who broke the case, I received a performance bonus. It wasn't a lottery win, but it was significant. It was enough to wipe out the last of my car payments and put a down payment on a house that Rodney and I would own. Not a bank, but I didn't keep all of it. I took $20,000 of that bonus, the exact amount my parents had demanded I pay for the venue deposit initially, and I opened a dedicated account. I sat down with Rodney and our lawyer. I want to start a fund, I said, the Jensen Legal Aid Initiative. Rodney looked at me. For who? For victims of familial financial abuse. I said, for the daughters who are coerced into co-signing loans, for the sons whose credit is ruined by their parents, for the people who are told that love means letting yourself be robbed. I want to pay for their credit freezes. I want to pay for their forensic audits. I want to give them the weapon I had to build for myself. Rodney took my hand. He kissed the knuckles. That is the best revenge I've ever heard of, he said. The dust finally settled on a Tuesday evening in late November. We were moving boxes into our new place, a small bungalow with a front porch that Rodney was already planning to rebuild. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. Dad. I hesitated. I hadn't spoken to him since the foreclosure. I answered. Hello, Bella. His voice sounded old. It sounded stripped of the bluster and the authority he used to wield. We are staying at your Aunt Sarah's place. Until we find a rental. I didn't say anything. I just waited. I went to see Cole today. He said, at the detention center. How is he? I asked. Not because I cared, but because it was the polite question. He is angry, my father said. He spends the whole hour talking about how you tricked him, how you set him up. He paused. I looked at him. Bella. I looked at my son. And for the first time I saw him. I didn't see the director. I didn't see the success story. I saw a 30-year-old man blaming his sister because he got caught stealing. I gripped the phone tighter, and I asked, and I realized my father's voice cracked. I realized we bet everything on him. We gave him the house. We gave him the retirement. We gave him your college fund. We thought he was the one who would save us. The silence on the line was heavy. It was the sound of a 30-year delusion shattering against the hard floor of reality. We thought he would save us. He repeated, barely a whisper. I walked out onto the porch of my new house. The air was cold and clean. I looked at the streetlights flickering on. He couldn't save you. Dad, I said softly. He couldn't even save himself. There was a long pause. Then, my father asked the question I knew was coming. Did you hate us? No, I said. I didn't hate you. I just stopped waiting for you to pick me. I took a breath. You wanted Cole to save you. But you forgot something. What he asked. I saved myself. I said, and that is the one thing you and Mom can't forgive. Because my survival proves that you were wrong. My father didn't speak for a long time. Then, he let out a shuddering breath. Goodbye, Bella. Goodbye, Dad. I hung up. I stood there for a moment, holding the phone. I expected to feel sad. I expected to feel the crushing weight of orphanhood, the finality of the cut, but I didn't. I felt light. I looked down at my hand. The simple gold band on my finger caught the light from the street lamp. It wasn't flashy. It didn't cost a fortune. But it was solid. It was unbroken. Rodney stepped out onto the porch behind me. He wrapped his arms around my waist and rested his chin on my shoulder. Who was that? He asked. Just the past, I said. He tightened his arms around me. They can't reach us here. I know, I said. I looked at the phone one last time. I pressed the power button and held it down. The screen went black. I didn't need to check my email. I didn't need to check the bank accounts. I didn't need to check the timeline. The investigation was closed. The case was adjudicated. The verdict was in. I was free. I turned in my husband's arms and looked at the open door of our home. It was warm inside. Let's go in, I said. We walked inside and closed the door. I heard the lock click. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. It wasn't the sound of locking people out. It was the sound of locking my life in. For the first time in 33 years, I didn't have to ask permission to be happy. I just was. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It was a long journey from that steakhouse table to this quiet porch, and I'm grateful you walked it with me. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening from a busy city, a quiet town, or somewhere in between? Please leave a comment below sharing your location, so we can see how far this story has traveled. If you enjoyed seeing the golden boy finally face the music and want more stories where justice is served cold, please subscribe to Juliet Revenge Stories. Hit that like button and tap the hype button to help this story reach more people who need to hear it. Stay strong, and remember you don't need anyone's permission to save yourself.